Welcome to today's episode of Interviews, where I'm currently in a summer program at Cornell University for entrepreneurship and economics. And I'm here with Mr. Rich Dunsworth, a dedicated leader and esteemed president of the University of Ozarks. With a rich legacy that spans over a decade at Ozarks and a prior impactful tenure at Millikin University, Mr. Dunsworth has fostered a vibrant academic community rooted in accessibility and innovation. His leadership has not only been remarkable in enrolling growth, but has also seen a successful execution of significant capital campaigns aimed at enhancing student life and academic excellence. As we dive into the discussion on leadership in higher education and creating opportunities for all, Mr. Dunsworth, may I invite you to share any initial reflections or key thoughts before we begin?
Well, first of all, I appreciate the introduction, and I appreciate the time to be here. I've had a pretty amazing journey because others have invested in me and invited me to be either parts of institutions or parts of individual people's lives. So I'm looking forward to having a conversation with you.
Okay, thank you. So starting off with our first question, reflecting on your journey from a first-generation college student to the president of the University of Ozarks, what were some pivotal moments that shaped your career in higher education administration?
Ash, it's hard not to think about a couple of key people. I'm reminded my sophomore year of undergrad of just not feeling like I fit in, not feeling like I belonged at the institution. I've likened it in the past to where it felt like everybody else had the playbook and that I was missing a chapter or I was just missing something.
Yeah.
And there was a staff member at Colorado State University there in Fort Collins, who, I don't know if she realized I was struggling or saw something in me, but she reached out and asked me to be involved in an organization from a student leadership perspective. And that gave me some roots, and caused me to really believe that I was supposed to be there and that I should stick it out. When I look back of the 30 plus years in higher education, there have been other people kind of placed in my life, and that they've either encouraged me to do something or they've invested in me, and that's made all the difference. It's allowed me to be prepared for those opportunities that came later, and I'll be forever grateful.
Was there any particular words that you received from a teenage age that resonated with you throughout your higher education?
Well, I would say it's a little bit younger than that. I had a teacher, her name was Margaret Chenoweth, and she basically instilled in me that I could do tough things, that I could be good at math, that I could be good at science, and that I could love and respect where I'm from, and still maybe not live there all of my life. And that stayed with me for a very long time.
Good to know. Many teenagers are looking for people that just have words that resonate with them. Yeah. What do you really recommend that they do to go find those people?
Well, I think sometimes it's using words, right? It's saying, hey, would you please invest in me? Or, you can think of several different people, as you ask the question, where, think of a young man, his name is Matthew, and he said, hey, could I sit down with you once a week and just talk about where I'm going in life? And at first I'm going, okay, why? And he said, I don't know. There's just something, I think I'm supposed to know you. But for him initiating that conversation, I don't know that we would have ever developed a relationship. I can also think about different people where they've said, hey, please invest. Please, would you help me out? Would you advise me? Would you mentor me? Mentor is sometimes an overused word, but it's a mutually selective, right? It's not where I go, ooh, let me mentor you, or I will mentor you. It's, hey, I have something maybe you can use, and you have something that you need from me.
So for every teenager really trying to find a mentor, remember that you have to initiate it. No one's going to come to you. You have to go out to people, and you can't be scared if you really want to make it in life.
And sometimes it's telling them what you need, right? That if you know that you've got a specific need in spiritual health, maybe physical health, maybe it's a discipline that you want to learn more about, it's saying, hey, would you please help me develop those skills over a period of time.
Yeah. And then under your leadership, the University of Ozarks has seen a significant growth and has been recognized for its value and affordability. What strategies have you employed to achieve these goals, and what challenges did you face along the way?
Yeah. So the University of the Ozarks is a small school located in the foothills of the Ozarks Mountains in Arkansas. And when I arrived, one of the things that I realized was that we had a wonderful education, but that there were some misunderstandings of who we served or who we didn't serve. So one of the first things is we talked about how do we own our own backyard? And how do we make sure that any student in our county who wanted that kind of an education could achieve it? And we were able to grow from about 30 local students to over 100. We then started looking at some of our international strategies. We have had a rich history of bringing in students from Central America, and started looking at, are there other countries that we might be able to avail or build relationships? And then the final piece that's helped with the growth is keeping the students we recruited, right? And it's called retention.
Yeah.
You retain them, you graduate them. And that was supported by, we've only raised tuition 3 times in 10 years. We've eliminated all hidden fees. So for example, if you register for a chemistry class, you're not paying a lab fee. Yeah. It's in the tuition. If you register for an art class, you're not paying a fee. It's all in the tuition. And a lot of that's because we serve first generation, we serve historically underrepresented. And, families lay out a budget and they're all set, and then they get hit with, oh, what about the parking fee? And what about this? And what about that? We don't have any of those. And that's helped with the affordability. The last piece on the affordability is that we made a commitment to decrease the average student loan debt. And to do that, we had to raise some additional funds and grow the amount of scholarships that we're able to offer, so that students are not leaving with more debt than their peers, and definitely not more debt than they can handle.
So what part of your life were you in when you started University of Ozarks?
Well, I was in my early 40s, and I'd been a vice president for about a decade at another institution. I had a 9-year-old son and 7-year-old twins. They're now college students. It's a very different stage of life.
Yeah. And then you've been actively involved with Higher Learning Commission and other educational bodies. How do you perceive the role of accreditation and governance in shaping the future of higher educational institutions?
All right. First of all, I'm pretty impressed you asked the question. So well done in your preparation for this conversation. The role of accreditation is to ensure that you get what you planned to get when you go to college or go to any school. If that's a 2-year community college, that you're getting workforce development. If that's an R1 and you're wanting to get a graduate degree, PhD, that the accreditation is really, it's a great big mirror to hold up to an institution and ask, are you doing what you set out to do, and are you doing it with quality? And that my role with the Higher Learning Commission and my role working with accreditation generally has been an amazing professional development, because it gives me an opportunity to see other schools, gives me an opportunity to see how others are doing, how they're attacking the challenges of present day higher ed. Yeah. I believe in the value of education, whether that's getting a short-term certificate in HVAC or whether that's getting a PhD in chemistry. That education can change people's lives, and education definitely changed the trajectory of mine.
And then remind me of how many people you started out with around like the first startup of University of Ozarks?
So University of Ozarks, when I arrived in 2013, we had 560 students, just under 200 employees. We topped out right before COVID at just over 800. We'll be back at 800 this year. Post-COVID, we took a little bit of a dip. We employ, in a given year, a little over 200 students. We've been at our current location since 1891. We were originally founded in 1834, which is 2 years before Arkansas even became a state. So we're knocking on our 200th anniversary here in a little over 9 years.
Wow, it's such an old school. And then education is rapidly evolving with the integration of technology and new learning modalities. How has the University of Ozark adapted to these changes, and what future innovations are you most excited about?
Yeah. Excited. I'll do excited and a little anxious, right? The role of artificial intelligence is one of those that causes me a little bit of angst. Actually, I was listening to a faculty presentation or watching a faculty presentation while you were in class this morning. And that was probably the 8th or 9th presentation I've watched in the last 90 days. It makes me anxious, but I want to lean into it because there are so many amazing tools out there that can help us synthesize information. Yes, it can also help people do things they shouldn't do. But I want to believe in the positive side of it. That how do you aggregate information? How do you reach out and you can have people helping you on projects all around the world, and with the right tools, you can assess, global history, right? And then it's how do we prepare you as a student, or how do we teach our students to decipher good information, bad information? How do we fairly and appropriately attribute it to where it really came from? And how do we make sure it doesn't just create more noise? Because too much information can just create noise. I also think about the role of technology and can it bring down the price point of higher education? One of the things we happen to be at an econ program, entrepreneurship, global economy, that I do think about the price point often. And up until now, for the most part, technology is driving up the price because universities are constantly investing in it. Can it get to the point where we really do bring down a price point and make education more accessible and still ensure that quality piece?
Because it's really, we're trying to see trends where people just use AI to do all their work. But
it's and exactly, and what you'll see is you'll start to see the mistakes, right? That AI can be a great tool in helping us, work through some disciplines, accounting, legal, marketing. But at the end of the day, you have to know more than the AI to know whether it's right. And I think that's the piece that people miss, is just because AI spits something out, somebody has to read it or analyze it to make sure it's correct. And I think that's going to be one of the changes in higher ed is, AI doesn't have judgment. AI doesn't have humanity. AI doesn't have empathy. The kinds of things that we've been talking about from a leadership standpoint.
And then moving forward, are you going to recommend students to start using AI as a tool at your university or stay away from it?
I don't think we can stay away. And here's why I would say that is that if let's say I shut it down and say absolutely not. And then one of my graduates is competing for a job. And one of the other candidates for that job knows how to ethically use AI, then I'm actually hurting my student. So we've got to talk through what are the appropriate ways to use AI, and maybe help that be an advantage. Simply closing the door and saying stay away, it's not realistic, and like I said, it's not what the market wants. The market wants efficiency. The market wants you to, if you can use that tool, use it. Right? Think about Excel. Think about Word. The kinds of technology that we all take for granted. I don't know that anybody would say, "Hey, you need to shut off all the functions on Word so that it doesn't tell you you're spelling something wrong." That's we should embrace it.
So AI is going to be like the new norm now.
I sure think so.
The concept of leadership varies widely across different sectors. How do you define effective leadership within the context of higher education, and who have been your role mentors and models?
All right. Let's do the last part first. The minute you say role model or mentor in higher ed, two people come to mind. One is a woman by the name of Dr. Sherilyn Poole. Sherilyn was one of my direct supervisors when I was an associate dean. She's still a dear friend. And one of the things that she did for me years ago was she said, hey, you have to go back to school.
Yeah.
If you don't go get a PhD, you're going to get stuck.
Yeah.
I spoke about her without calling out her name earlier when we talked about boards of directors.
Yeah.
Well, she's on my board of directors. She's like, you got to go back. And that's a tough thing to hear when you're like, hold it, but I'm a good employee.
Yeah.
You want to push me out of the nest? Well, sometimes the nest gets too comfortable.
Yeah.
And mentors are willing to give you a little push out of the nest. Another one is a gentleman by the name of Doug Zemke. Doug was the president of an institution I served for 20 plus years. And he saw me as a potential university president long before I ever saw myself. And nearly 17 years ago, he said, hey, I think you've got some deficiencies. And I said, oh, well, thank you. That's so kind of you to tell me. No. But he said, hey, you don't have any experience in international education. I think you should lead some projects of ours in India, Taiwan, and China. And the first thing we need to do is you need to see those countries.
Yeah.
And he sent me to India for nearly 3 weeks. And it was an amazing experience. And then he's like, hey, and then from there, we're going to send you to Hong Kong to meet with some colleagues of ours. And then you're going to go on to China. And then the next loop was to Taiwan. What I think about now is he was investing in me.
Yeah.
Another example from him, my team made a mistake. And that mistake had some pretty significant dollar figures attached to it. It was one of the few times in my life that I reasonably thought I was going to get fired. We didn't do anything immoral or unethical or any of that. We just made a mistake in our financial modeling. And I go in and I'm talking to him, and I'll never forget his words. He looks at me and he says, how do we make the mistake worth it? I'm like, what do you mean by that? And he's like, you decide. And we did a postmortem with my team. Members of the team then presented our mistake nationally at a conference, and we had other people coming up going, I can't believe you pulled back the curtain and explained that. I said, well, it's our way of making sure we don't make that mistake again.
Yeah. So like embracing your mistakes is
exactly key. And learning as much from them as possible. To do that post-action review, in healthcare, it's more, I think, common. People talk about, postmortems.
Yeah.
If God forbid somebody dies, they really dig into it. Well, the rest of us should do that. When you make a mistake, do a post-action review and say what caused the mistake.
So really that mindset saying that everyone makes mistakes rather than just embracing your mistake, making it public, and making sure that you don't repeat it.
That's exactly right. And that we learn as much as we can, and that we share that knowledge with others.
That's perfect. And also I noticed how you mentioned going international. Is that something you recommend for absolutely everyone? I remember during class you recommended.
Yeah, I think every student, if you can, you should study abroad. That seeing the United States from foreign soil, I think, will make you a more informed voter. I think it will make you a more informed citizen. And it causes, I think, you to have just a different respect for the United States, a different perspective. And I know that for some students, it's like, well, I can't afford it, or that's expensive. I'd encourage everybody to start early. Maybe spring semester, your freshman year, start thinking about it. Many campuses have funds. Most campuses have staff members that's their whole objective, is to get their students abroad. And then in some campuses, you'll do what's called an immersion, where maybe you study a topic and then you go to a country. For example, I have a child that's a nursing student, and she's looking at a program where she's also doing a minor in Spanish. And she's looking to do a short-term immersion in Cuba in nursing, to see another way of treating patients.
Yeah. So don't limit yourself to one place, really.
Yeah. As much as you can.
Community involvement and development are key themes in your career. Can you discuss the importance of community engagement for educational institutions and how you foster that at Ozarks?
Sure. All right. So our community is about 10,000 people, not quite that. And one of our observations was that we had a decent number, a fair number of faculty and staff that were commuting in from cities further out. And we were hearing from community colleagues and our students that we had some voids in the community. For example, food. We had wonderful options for food, but what people were saying is, hey, we don't have an option for like business meetings. We don't have an option for sit down. Well, the university had some empty space, and it was actually a community member that saw the potential before we did. And she brought some folks to us and said, hey, this family would like to take one of your buildings and turn it into a restaurant. We started working through it, and 6 years later, it's a very successful American kind of steakhouse. It's called Casper's. It's winning all sorts of awards in Northwest Arkansas. You know, the best wait staff, the best steak, can't remember one thing a year ago, you know, chicken fried steak. It's just a good American restaurant. From there, you know, we built a health clinic. That we found that our students were having trouble finding primary care. So we aren't the provider of the health services. We simply built the space. Fast forward a couple years, and our tenant came to us and said, can I buy the building? So we sold the building and then used those funds to reinvest in other businesses. We have a t-shirt and engraving company that only has a couple of full-time staff members, and all of the other staff members are students. So that it produces almost everything in our bookstore. It's also where you can go and get any kind of tchotchke for a company. You can get ball caps or engraved mugs, and that helps students pay their bill. And those are the kinds of mindset is that what we said is that we didn't want to go head to head with any family-owned business, anything direct that would hurt somebody in our community. If it's a national chain, or if there's a void, something that is just not being met, that if it's appropriate for us, we'll step into that space. And we created a geography within a few blocks of our campus. And we think about it in terms of creating Velcro, right? That we want our campus to be a little stickier for our students, our faculty, and staff.
Also, I remember the activity during class where you asked if you got voted out. Were you responsible for the success of that? I'd like to flip that on you. Do you think you were responsible for the success of all those restaurants and buildings?
Oh, no. That's a great question. No. It takes a team to do almost anything. And like the first restaurant, when her first name's Kelly, she was responsible for economic development in our city. And she's the one that saw the potential and said, hey, would you consider? And I'm like, nah, I can't see that. And I didn't see it. But she saw it. And then the owner, a woman by the name of Angie, she saw the potential of this old rock building, and it's gorgeous now. I mean, she found, you know, when they started peeling back years and years of, veneer, they found great hardwood floors, and they found beautiful fixtures, and she turned it into something really, really cool. I'm one that definitely believes that, yes, I'll make decisions, and yes, I'll try to find funding and all of that, but you've got to have the right partners, and you got to have the right people. And then in many ways, it's folks like me getting out of the way so that people can really own and drive their own projects.
Wow. Amazing. And then looking ahead, what are your main goals for the University of Ozarks in the coming years? And how do you plan to continue supporting student success and institutional growth?
Great. We need to continue to grow a little bit. That I think our ideal model has us with probably 200 more students. And the reason why I believe that, one is we're built for it, but we have a couple of programs that are still a little bit small. One of the things you'd find is that as we grew, we didn't add a bunch of new academic programs. I have a bias that I think it takes multiple voices to teach a curriculum, just like here, where you've been hearing from Dr. Wagner, you've been hearing from me, Camille, the others, that if we have disciplines where, say, a student in their junior and senior year are only hearing from one or two faculty, I want to grow that so that I can add a third. at least, I think, 3,
Mm-hmm.
and in some disciplines, at least 4.
Yeah.
I still want us to be intentionally small, that we don't wish to become a large regional public, and know that I attended a couple of large regional publics, but it's different.
Mm.
That when you're a small institution, I want my students to still be in classes of 15, to still be in classes of 20, but I want to make sure they're able to hear different perspectives, and whether that's different domestic perspectives or different worldviews, because I think they'll be better prepared. That's on the curricular side. I think the other piece is that I want to continue to grow resources.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we serve the first gen Pell. We serve some students that have some challenges. And if I can take the financial challenge off the table, maybe the academic challenge or the emotional challenge or mental health challenge won't be so dire, right? But if finance is just one more issue for a student, sometimes they do the one thing they can do, and they exercise decisions with their feet. When I'd much rather them say, can you dig in just a little bit harder? So yeah, we're going to grow and continue to improve the financial position of the institution.
If you'd go back in the past, would you want to attend a school like yours?
Oh, all right. I've often wondered. So I started undergrad as a chemistry major.
Mm.
It was down to a school like mine that I work at now, and the school I ultimately attended.
Mm.
And I wonder, if I'd gone to that small school, would I have gotten a degree in chemistry? Would I have gone on in that field? Well, I don't know. I attended where I attended. I'm proud that I went to Colorado State in Fort Collins. It was a great institution for me. I wasn't successful in chemistry. But maybe I wasn't willing to work as hard as I needed to work back then.
Mm.
I tell our students sometimes that I wasn't smart enough, or all sorts of things that you tell yourself. Other disciplines came easier to me, and I got more excited about them. So I turned from chemistry to political science, and the rest is history. It's been okay.
Yeah, are you like a believer of nature or a believer in nurture?
Oh, it's both, right? I mean, that I was encouraged by my parents, my grandparents. I was encouraged by multiple people in my community, the nurture part. I was also in an environment in Fort Collins where people cared and people invested. So I think it's both. And some of us respond differently.
Yeah. And then also, just like a general question, do you have a business background as well?
I don't. I have a legal background, so that I did the undergrad in political science, and then I have a graduate degree in guidance counseling education. And then when Dr. Poole encouraged me to go get a PhD, people assumed I'd go get a PhD in political science and slide either into the faculty role or higher ed administration that way. Well, I found myself more interested in law. And there's a lot of the study of law that comes in on the business side. And then fast forward 20 years of just working in, universities are a business.
Yeah.
We may be not for profit, but we've got to understand the finances.
If there's one thing that you'd advise a teenager that you learn in law, like one concept that's universally beneficial, what would that be?
Wow. Universally beneficial to a teenager. Well, I'm going to sound like a broken record because you've heard this before. I think it's understanding property rights, right? That if every teenager understands the concept of ownership and the concept that we have a rule of law that not only protects our physical property rights, but also protects, copyright and trademark, that if you come up with the best idea, you can own that.
Yeah.
And that in the United States will protect that ownership. so that you can be innovative, you can be creative, right? You protect your art, protect your music, or protect your idea that might be something that might be patentable, right?
Yeah.
I know you and some others are working on some ideas that from a science standpoint I don't fully understand, but I know other people who do. Well, maybe you'll get to the point where that's patentable.
Yeah.
And we've got a structure here that encourages that innovation so that you can actually own your own ideas.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And yes, it to some degree exists in other parts of the world, but it is not completely global.
Yeah. So we're really lucky to be here where we can actually own something, because I know you could, or it was Dr. Wagner or Camille. She talked about how North Korea, no matter what you do, you just don't have property rights. So we're really blessed to be here.
That was probably Dr. Wagner talking
Yeah.
about some countries you just can't. And in some countries, the idea of trademark and copyright, right? Where maybe you can own land, but the idea of owning music or owning art or owning something inside your head.
And then for students aspiring to careers in educational administration, what advice would you offer? What skills and experiences should they seek to develop?
Sure. First is study something you're excited about, right? That take classes from faculty who inspire you, and don't shy away from the numbers. Too many people go, "Ooh, I want to work with students, or I want to work in education," but we've got to understand the finance, and you must understand how budgets work, how the business operates, and you can be an amazing clinician or an amazing practitioner, but you have to understand the finance. So don't shy away from it, and take those courses too.
And then talking about finance, I picked up you talking about venture capitalism.
Yeah.
Can you explain that real quick?
Sure. Well, when we're talking about venture capital, so when you think about that, it's where people have pooled resources. From a simplistic standpoint, it's the pooled resources, and those resources are simply there to invest in opportunities. And each of those funds have different level of risk, right? So maybe they're going, hey, we hope that 1 in 10 of our investments is a home run. 1 in 10 is a good double. Where others might say, no, we aren't willing to take that risk. So we want to make sure that it's companies that already exist, companies that already have shown success, and we're not going to be on the high end of risk. So it's all about what those investors are hoping to achieve. Is it to stimulate something in a community, or is it to guarantee return?
Yeah.
And that's where it's capital that to invest in businesses, people, entrepreneurs, ideas, and it all depends on different kinds of things. So, when we think about Shark Tank and the presenter, or the entrepreneurs that are there that are investing, would we call it venture capital? Maybe, but it's or is it angel investors? It's using somebody else's money to get something off the ground.
And you're in this industry, right?
Well, I'm not necessarily in this industry. That the institution that I serve has placed some capital, and it's very low risk. It's things in real estate, these businesses that we've talked about. The goal is that they serve, that we have a return expectation across the portfolio. So yes, we're able to take a little bit of risk. And so this is set up to where there's an amount allocated. There are 4 people, kind of like the board of directors concept that we've talked about. There are 4 people that advise us on, is this a good risk? Is this too much of a risk? And we present to them, and for the most part, they've accepted our recommendations. There have been a couple of projects where they've just gone, it's too early. There isn't a proof of concept here, or that's just too far afield for what we're trying to do. And that particular fund limited to geography and limited to types of investments that really create that Velcro I mentioned.
Okay, and then based off the person you are, correct me if I'm wrong, you believe in investing in the person rather than the business, right?
Well, it's a two. It's a twofer. The business has got to make sense, right? And then that if I look at, the person has to be in line from a value standpoint,
Mm.
right? That whether that's honesty, whether that's integrity, whether that's willing to work hard. I mentioned the Casper's restaurant. Um, yeah, the business made sense, but the people,
Mm.
the Mr. and Mrs. Casper, their names on the wall, yeah, they were just as important. Is it 49-51%? I don't know.
Yeah.
Is it 50-50? Can one make up? I would say that you could have the most amazing business plan, but if you come across as shady,
Yeah.
I'm gonna pass.
And then what qualities do you see the most potential in teenagers? Like if you see that person, they admit that quality, you're just gonna be like, they're gonna make it.
What qualities? Willing to work, right?
Mm-hmm.
The ability to shake somebody's hand and look them in the eye and say hello.
Mm-hmm.
The ability to advocate, and it's agency. Can you walk into a space and not come across as overly arrogant, but at least come across with a degree of confidence and go, hey, I want to be here. And then probably the last characteristic there is someone that's curious,
Yeah.
that wants to know not only a discipline or an academic area, but also is genuinely curious about their colleagues and their peers and how the world around them works.
Yeah. Finally, maintaining work-life balance is crucial in any high responsibility role. How do you manage this balance, and what hobbies or activities do you enjoy outside your professional life?
All right. So work-life balance is one of those that I almost cringe when I hear that phrase. All right. So let me tell you how I think about it. I think about it more as a seesaw or a teeter-totter. That sometimes my family needs 100% of my attention. And sometimes my work needs almost 100% of my attention. And it's how over a period of time do I ensure that teeter-totter is moving. For example, the last couple of years, my children have been seniors in high school. And we're in that cycle of their last swim meet, the last track meet, the last this. I made a commitment that I wouldn't miss them. And I made sure made sure that I could do that from a work standpoint, but that sometimes meant I was working weekends so that I could be out of the office on a Tuesday to go be where my kids were. I think also in the work-life balance, it's getting clear on what work matters. I increasingly think that we do a lot of busy work, and have actually 2 weeks ago asked my executive team, what kinds of things do I do that creates unnecessary work for them, right? Are there questions I pose? Are there things that I do that create that shadow work? And can we figure out how to eliminate it? I've asked them to consider what would it look like if we didn't send each other emails over the weekend. Even though everybody knows with those devices in our hand, it's real easy to text a colleague and go, hey, well, hold it. It's 6 o'clock on a Friday. If I text a colleague who, as the president, more often than not, they're a subordinate, and ask a question, do they feel like it can wait till Monday? So let me make sure I'm role modeling that for them. Let me make sure I'm role modeling, hey, it's okay to go for a walk at lunchtime, or, hey, I can't expect people to be available all the time. And then I think some of it's just thinking about how we work, that each of us works a little differently. Are you a morning person? Are you an afternoon person? Are you giving as much flexibility to people to just simply do the work that they need to do?
And then, in my opinion, the most important question, if you were to do it all over again with the current knowledge you have as a teenager, what would you do differently to make sure you're ahead of everyone?
Oh my goodness. If I were to do it all over again, I would have asked my wife out earlier. We were friends for a long time before I asked her out. And a lot of my professional success is because I have a pretty amazing partner at home. Other things that I think I would have done, let's say early, my freshman year of college, I was pretty reserved. I I wasn't as confident as maybe I am now. And I'd have gotten much more comfortable raising my hand and asking for help. That life's too short to go through it alone. You know, it's, yeah, one piece of advice, ask for help. Took me a while to get to that one.
Yeah.
But I'd go, ask for help and go, hey, on most campuses, every campus I've ever seen, there are people there trying to help. Whether that's walking into a faculty member's office and going, I don't understand the material, or walking into your academic advisor and saying, hey, something's not working. Ask for help. Most faculty just want to invest in young people, and they get energized when a student says, hey, I don't understand, but I really want to. Can you help me?
Well, that was all your questions were answered beautifully, and I'm really thankful for this interview. Thank you so much for coming out today.
You're welcome. I enjoyed it, and good for you. I look forward to hearing it.
Okay, thank you so much.